green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
Day 2 here on Birds 365. Not from McMullen and McDonald. This is show number 327, as a matter of fact. Now, I'm talking about the Philadelphia Eagles and their season underway. A tip of the Hurts season hat to John McMullen, who was here at the start of Birds 365 yesterday before making his way over to the first workout of the year for the Birds. But then another show last night here on Birds 365 put up an article, camp recap on JAKIBSports.com, and he's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to go with me this morning. Good job out of you, McMullen.
Well, thank you, Jody. We'll see about the bright-eyed, but I can't, compete with Nick Siriani and Jonathan Gannon and Tone DeShields, for that matter. Our associate, our producer. So,
well, how would you know about Gannon? Gannon is so understood.
Yeah, that's what Tone said. Yes, sir. Well, no, I know Gannon. He's ridiculously energetic. It's ridiculous. The guy's always,
and he doesn't show that when he sits in front of a microphone.
Oh, the guy's always going a mile a minute. Yeah, he's calm though. Yeah,
give him credit for that. If when he's out there, and you were able to determine that in 58 minutes yesterday, huh?
Yeah, I mean, they did, jokes aside, they do go pretty hard for that 58 minutes, but it is 58 minutes. But they do, a lot of red zone work, a lot of, they call it high intensity. They have green, yellow, and red practices. That was a green practice, and it was, to their credit, it was high intensity, but yeah, 58 minutes is 58 minutes. I don't know how you get around that.
I'll take Nick Siriani at his word about the intensity level, and you're not the only one who reported it. All the other guys said the same thing. They jam a lot into 58 minutes. They do their work. They're not there to screw around. They get their work in during their less than an hour-long practice. But he also, here's where I question Siriani is his math. They've got more walkthroughs this week, this preseason.
Starting today.
But they've also got more green practice, which is high intensity. Well, if they've got more walkthroughs and more green practices, what do they have less of? It seems
yellow.
To me like they got less of.
They have more yellow, less of yellow practices.
So what is a yellow practice? Yesterday was high intensity. Today is a walkthrough. What does a yellow practice look like?
It would be more of to use, when Doug was here, he would have what was called a 20-20-20 practice, which was sort of, after they went with pads, like for 2 days, they would scale it back for 1 day. It would be a practice, but different format. You have 20 minutes for the offense, 20 minutes for the defense, 20 minutes for special teams. A different format, the offense would be, essentially playing scout team for the defense. The defense would be playing scout team for the offense and all that kind of stuff. So you're just trying to get the other side. So it was more scaled back. It was not high intensity. So you have less of those. And, it's all health related. I've been saying this on Birds 365 since we started. Nick went into it more in depth, so I give him credit for that. He was talking about soft tissue injuries. Their studies say the third day there's a spike in soft tissue injuries. Now, their third day, they're considering today the third day because they had some conditioning stuff when the guys reported on Tuesday. So that's why they went with the walkthrough, and that's why they're going to have these walkthroughs after some high intensity practices. So, yeah, less yellow practices, I guess, would be the way to describe it.
Okay, yeah, his math did confuse me yesterday. I have to admit to that. So you did get 58 minutes of high intensity practice in, and I love the big guys wearing the great kazoo bubbles on their helmets.
Yeah. The Guardian caps. That's nice. Great. How many people are going to get that, Jody? The Great Kazoo.
Yeah.
I like it.
A couple people may. Glad you did. And that it supposedly shows that they are high intensity. You were there. There was nobody really hitting anybody yesterday, was there?
No, that has nothing to do with intensity. That's just the way the NFL is going for the concussion. Everything's about legal indemnification, to be honest, down the road. So certain positions, offensive line, linebackers, tight end, guys who might knock helmets are going to be wearing those Guardian caps. Eagles aren't the first team to do it. It's the first time they've done it, and they're going to do it throughout camp consistently. But that doesn't have anything to do with the intensity aspect. I mean, in yellow practices, in theory, or red, they're still going to be wearing those certain positions. So it's just a way to lessen the potential impact. Because even if you're doing a walkthrough and you got helmet, you're not going to have helmets on. So that's a bad example. But even if you're having a light practice and you have helmets, sometimes guys bang their head, they fall, they bang their head on the ground. So it's just another sort of safeguard to try to prevent that.
And that I can appreciate. And that's just putting an extra piece of equipment on. You are actually at least believing there's the possibility there could be contact. Because, John, I'm pretty sure the Eagles know that. But just in case, let me get this on the record. There will be contact when the season starts.
Well, yeah.
The other team is actually going to hit the Eagles. The Eagles are going to be expected to hit the other team. So,
I can actually see a place down the road. I'll probably be gone, but we're playing flag football. I mean, the NFL, I don't know if you saw, it was a couple of weeks ago, Troy Vincent leading, try to get flag football in the Olympics. Not real football, flag football.
Right.
I never thought it. Now I think it. Now I think that eventually we might be playing flag football.
Will it happen in John McMullen or my lifetime or any?
It's not going to happen in my lifetime.
Our streaming youngsters out there who check into Bird 65. Thank you very much for that. All right, first question of the day for actually what went down on the field. Did you see Brandon Graham make any moves, do anything that made you say, all right, he's 100%. He's a little older than he was when he came out of Michigan. That's for sure. Can't beat Father Time on that one. But after last year's injury, you've said several times here on Birds 365, it looked to you like he was really chomping at the bit to come back last year, and the Eagles didn't necessarily want to push the envelope or risk it. Is Brandon Graham 100% in your eyes?
Yes. Yeah. He's completely 100%. I don't think even that's in fact, he's probably in better shape than he usually is at this time of year because he spent all of last year rehabbing. I said that injury was September. I mean, so it was early in the season. When it comes to weight and muscle, he's in the best shape of his life. You could tell he's been living in the weight room. The bigger issue with that type of injury is just, Brandon Brooks is a perfect example of this. We went through it. Brandon, would get in phenomenal shape when he was rehabbing from his Achilles. He would, he was a big Instagram guy. He would put pictures up. He looked like he could go into a WWE ring. WrestleMania 40, by the way. Did you get that on the show, Jody?
I forgot.
Completely forgot.
It's
going to be at Lincoln Financial Field. Not. I wanted to break the news right at 10, but what happens, it happens.
Good. Hey, nice out of you, and I hope you put it up on your Twitter or whatever else. And you did tell me and say, but you can't say anything until 10 o'clock if you're going to say. And then we had some technical issues yesterday with our buddy Rick Zaratella, so I was just worrying about getting the show done.
It's not that big of a deal, but it is a big deal for Philadelphia. But getting back to Brandon, he would get in a great shape, but he's a 330-pound guy when he's playing football. He doesn't walk around. I bet you I haven't seen him recently, but it's probably 280 by now. There's a lot of wear and tear on the Achilles when you're trying to play football. That's the part you have to worry about with Brandon Graham at 34. But as far as being in shape, as far as that kind of thing, you don't have to worry about that. I mean, that guy's ready to go. And, it'll be interesting because he was, when we started shifting toward the maintenance days, the veteran maintenance days, Brandon was always a guy who's like, screw that, I'm going to practice. Now, I think he's going to have those veteran maintenance days this year. I don't think they're going to let him out there, but he's in great shape, and he was taking the first rep with the first team defense, and it was like old times. But he also realizes he's going to take a bit of a step back because, there's going to be a lot of competition for playing time on the defensive line because there's a lot of options that Jonathan Gannon can use.
It'll be very interesting to see how the defensive line shakes out in these high-intensity 58-minute practices. One thing that either you noted or someone else noted, I think it was in your column that I saw on practice number 1. They're giving veterans a little bit of a nod over youngsters. N'Kobe Dean with the third team, Jordan Davis with the second team. One that kind of jumped out to me was Kayvon Wallace on the first team with the starters over both Anthony Harris and Jaquiski Tart. I think Harris wasn't.
Harris was. He had COVID. There was 4 or 5 players who recently had COVID that they're being very cautious with. They called it, a progression from COVID. So Harris wasn't working in team drills. He did some individual stuff, but wasn't working in team drills. So, Tart was healthy and ready to go, and they let Kayvon Wallace take the first reps with first team reps with Marcus Epps. That was a bit of a surprise to me. And I said, Tone and I were talking about this as well yesterday. He didn't get here till June, whatever, I think it was 18th, 19th, somewhere in that range. But remember, OTAs were done by that point. So he had done nothing with the Eagles. That was his first day with the Eagles. Well, Tuesday, report day, but that was his first practice with the Eagles. So you start to say, well, that makes some sense. But then I was thinking, I go back to last year. They signed Steven Nelson 2 days before the start of training camp, and he took the first rep as the starting corner.
He was first team?
First rep, But, it was Zach McPherson as a rookie 4th-round pick. So you kind of weigh it. Kayvon's been here for a while. Maybe they want to defer to the veteran Eagle. Strange to call him a veteran Eagle, but that's what he is at this point. I don't expect it to last. Let's put it that way. But, maybe the Eagles want it to happen because Howie Roseman was talking about the safety position before the practice started, and he kind of foreshadowed. He was talking up Marcus Epps, and Marcus made the play of the day. So that was a positive sign for the Eagles. And he also mentioned Kayvon. He said, we need, he was honest. He said, we need to see more from Kayvon Wallace, which I think we all know, but it's refreshing to hear honesty from the GM. They need more speed back there. They need more athleticism. So they probably hope the light goes off for Kayvon Wallace, but I wouldn't count on it.
Well, he did get first team reps, so it was one day, and we'll see if he can parlay that into something more than that. All right, before we get our first guest up of the day, one JAKIB Media fans will be well recognizing. Give me your Jalen Hurts evaluation. That's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got to know exactly what everybody thought of the however many passes Jalen Hurts threw yesterday. Do you actually keep score?
No, that's Elliot's job. That is Elliot. Follow Elliot Shore Parks if you want to know the nonsense of the training camp numbers and who knows how official. It's like keeping stats at a high school game. If you miss a play, you're screwed. But there was some good and there was some bad. And the bad was probably the play I mentioned, Marcus Epps. And it was bad more not because Marcus made a nice interception. The ball came out late, which gave him the opportunity to make that interception. And that was one of the problems with Jalen Hurts last year. Ball not coming out on time too often. So that was probably the most concerning part. On the other hand, I saw him make a back shoulder throw to Quez Watkins that I've never seen him make before. I mean, it was Rodgers-like. It was perfect. It was pinpoint. And it was from the slot. Normally, you see those back shoulders outside because it's easier. Now, it was 7-on-7. It wasn't team drills. So that makes it a little bit easier because you don't have as much traffic. But it was a great throw. It was a great great catch as well by Quez Watkins. So positives on both sides. And that's the kind of throw you got to make in the NFL. And that was a big time throw. So that was a real positive point.
So you would categorize it as more good than bad?
Yeah, more. And it should be. I mean, it's practice. A lot of the 7-on-7 stuff, as I said, that is heavily skewed towards the offense. So it's a little bit easier. In the team drills, it gets a little bit more difficult. That's where Marcus had the interception. But I would say overall there was more good than bad. Yeah.
That's not a bad start for Jalen Hurts. All right. He is John McMullen. I am Jody McDonald. We are adding to the mix. Our very own Rob Ellis is going to join us next. You know him from Sports Take. He also is the host of the Eagles postgame show on their radio network. Robbie E. Rob Ellis joins us next here on Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. 1 free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
Appreciate you getting in with us on Birds 365 with your Mac and Mac guys, McDonald and McMullen. There's a familiar face you JAKIB Media YouTube fans should recognize from our very own Sports Take and the host of the Eagles postgame show on their radio network, one Mr. Rob Ellis here on Birds 365. Good to get you up on another show, Mr. Ellis.
I'm loving it. Max squared, man. What better way to start the day? I'm ready to roll, man. Hanging with you.
There we go. We need some of that energy, Rob Ellis. Well, I do. A long day yesterday.
I hear you. It's like the first day of school, right, John? You get back there,
exactly.
You see some familiar faces.
Although the first day of school's like a half day now, Rob.
It's a good point. Well, it kind of is like, you're with the Eagles, you're right. And then you get an off day the next day or a walkthrough. It's nice.
Yeah. Second day of school, I don't remember getting off. But
no, that was a full day. It was hardcore.
Let's start with that. 58 minutes, high intensity. You probably heard Nick Siriani trying to explain it. You buy that, Rob Ellis, or you think? I know from my perspective, I think Nick Siriani's a competitive guy. I find it very hard to believe that if he wasn't allowed to practice more, he'd say, "Yeah, forget it. This is enough." Your thoughts on that?
I don't think he's acting on his own accord for sure.
Yeah.
I think this comes from upstairs. And look, John, here's where I'm at. Does that seem short to me? Yeah. Does it seem kind of crazy they're not practicing today? Yeah. But they were the least injured team last year, and you have to take that into account. And I'm willing at least to give them the benefit of the doubt. The part where I'm going to stray from this is if they start the season off and they look like they're a mess and they don't look, tackling sloppy. You may see that around the league, but tackling sloppy. They don't appear to know where they're supposed to be in certain ways. Like, to me, you can offset that a little bit if you're doing more film study, if you're doing more installation stuff in the classroom, I guess. But if it starts off ugly, then you have every right to come down on them. I mean, even by the NFL standards now with these CBAs, the Eagles take this to an extreme.
Yeah, they do.
The lack of work.
Well, to follow up real quick before you jump in, Jody. Last year, Rob, they looked great week one. But then 2-5 start, and all of a sudden that was a mirage. So maybe that had more to do with Atlanta not being ready with a rookie head coach. So if they show up in Detroit and just wax the Lions, are you going to feel comfortable and say, all right, they made the right decision, they're healthy, they're comfortable? Or are you going to wait a couple of weeks? Because last year unfolded in a negative fashion from that perspective. All the penalties, remember, too, at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, they were heavily penalized. I think you got to wait about a month, John. I don't think you can gauge it by one, especially against – and I think Detroit's going to be better. Look, Detroit wasn't – if you watch them last year, I know them just from a betting perspective, they were a great betting team. They were pretty competitive. The Eagles beat the brakes off of Detroit last year. But, I mean, I think they're going to be better this year, but you got to give me more than one game. You're right about the penalties, and the one that drove me nuts was the receiver pick plays. Which
that was all year.
I know that was, and to me, Nick Sirianni's a former receiver. Like if you're going to get that right, I don't know how that happened, but I need to see it for about a month, John, before I can say, you know what, this was the right way to go. But again, they were very healthy last year in their defense.
Robbie, I just asked John this, and I know you had to deal with it. Did he keep an actual handwritten record of how many completions Jalen Hurts had and how many passes he threw in the first day of practice?
By the way, I have that, Jody. But I give it a hat tip to Elliott Shore Parks. 12 for 15, according to Elliott.
That's pretty damn. That's 80%. That's like the Eagles' opposing quarterbacks are going up against them during that first half.
That was Derek Carr-esque, Jody.
Yes, exactly right. Good for Jalen Hurts. The reason why I bring it up, Rob, is because you had to deal with it doing a show with D. Gunn, who decided to report on report he got on what Jalen Hurts was doing in OTAs. Whether it's overstated or not. Thanks, Elliot, for the numbers. Yeah, I'm going to just put the numbers aside. What are you looking for when you either get the chance or get reports from guys who are actually there? John said he made a great back shoulder throw, which wasn't necessarily his forte last year. Do we have to wait? Like you're waiting a month to find out if the Eagles are handling this right with less practice than maybe anybody else in the National Football League, at least via time? When do you say, all right, here's what I'm looking for from Jalen Hurts. Either he's giving it to me or he's not. How do you determine whether Jalen Hurts is improved enough going forward for this team past 2022?
I'll tell you, Jody, it's all about clock for me with him. In terms of just how quickly is he getting the ball out, if he's going through his reads.
And that was his worst play yesterday, Rob. He threw the ball late.
Yeah.
And Marcus Epps was able to undercut it and intercept it.
That's what concerns me the most, guys. I mean, I think the can't throw the deep ball thing is overblown. I think some of the other stuff gets blown out of proportion with him. But the biggest thing for me is, if the first read isn't there, I don't want him to just tuck it, run to his right like he almost always does. I want him to try to go through progressions. I want him to climb the pocket. What's Brady do better than anybody else maybe that's ever played the game? It's climb that pocket. Peyton Manning. These guys weren't going to, win any kind of 100-yard dash, but they were able to buy themselves enough time. And that's all you need in that league sometimes is second. So that's what it's all about for me. I want to see him be able to hang, not just fall back on his athleticism, which is great, mind you. However, you don't ultimately win deep. You don't go deep in the NFL with that trait. He's got to be able to stay in the pocket and make the throws.
Now, what do you think, Rob, of the team, everybody falling on their sword for Jalen Hurts? Oh, Jalen Hurts. I mean, everybody. You just mentioned Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. Everybody, including those guys. Aaron Rodgers, throw out any name you want, has a bad OTA practice. Who cares? Not a big deal. But this team was falling on their swords. A.J. Brown, the head coach, he's wearing the T-shirt. Everybody, is that a good thing? They want to protect their quarterback. You think it's a little too much insulation? Could work both ways.
Yeah, I don't mind Siriani wearing the T-shirt. That's kind of who he is. Like, he's kind of a goofball high school football coach, rah-rah. Yeah. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think it connects with the players, and I think he'd wear anybody. I think you could see him wearing Brandon Graham.
Yeah, he already has, yeah.
So I don't care about that part. I do think the players are almost overprotective, like an older brother is maybe sometimes with the younger brother. And it does concern me a little bit. What's the line? Thou does protest a little too much. It feels like it's a little bit over the top for me, that they're almost very sensitive to it. Like every quarterback goes through that. I mean, I get AJ Brown was trying to have his back with Gunner's report, but like you said, who cares? It's one practice. Was he off a little bit? Yeah. Gunner wasn't saying he stunk the whole OTAs. He said it was one practice. Like, to me, if you're going overboard with that, come on, man. Like, what are we doing? So I do think it's a little bit much, which worries me because maybe they're seeing some of the things on the downside that isn't necessarily good. And they kind of know a little bit, we got to prop this guy up. I don't think he asks them to do that by any stretch. Let me be clear, because I think he's secure enough in his own person and his own skin. But I think they almost go over the top, which would worry me. Like, I don't think you're getting Randall Cobb is not going over the top to protect Aaron Rodgers if he has a rough OTA. Let's put it that way.
Oh, that's a foregone conclusion. Exactly. Here's the only storyline that I would say goes above and beyond that everybody loves Jalen and Jalen's the greatest leader. And why are you guys picking on Jalen? And you're so mistaken when you critique Jalen. Here's the only one that tops it for me. Jalen is going to be so much better because for the second consecutive year, he's working with the same coaching staff and the same family. Stop. Come on. You're in the NFL. This isn't high school where, continuity. If you're with the same guy, that's going to make it that much easier. Are you with either of you two guys with me on this? All right. The story's been reported. It doesn't need to be harped on. Jalen shouldn't be falling back on, oh, I know this so much better. Just go out and get the job done.
Yeah, I think, Jody, it falls on the intangible thing that we always kind of fall back on too, right? That plays into it as well. I mean, do you love the fact that he's not Kyler Murray and you don't have to put clauses in his contract to study? Yeah, that's great, right? I mean, I love that. And by the way, that's
unreal
all over it. I have a real bad feeling about Arizona. That's just me. But nonetheless, I'm with you. Like, ultimately, all this stuff is great. But it's, to an extent, it's kind of window washing a little bit. You got to be able to make the plays on the field. Like, I'm a great guy, but if I'm lining up against Detroit week 1, September 11th, the Eagles are toast. Okay. So he's got to be able to make the throws. To me, it's the mid-range game where he struggles more than anything else. It's the middle of the field. It's those touch passes.
Yeah.
That's what he's got to get better at. I don't worry about, like, I think AJ Brown's going to help him a lot because you can hit him 5 out and he's going to make a big play for you after the catch. And that's huge. And I think he can connect with Devontae Smith late, deep, but it's the middle stuff more than anything else. But Jody, I hear you. I mean, look, we all do it and we all discuss it. And we all know what a good guy he is. It's almost like, how much more can we say it at this point?
Yeah. I do think it helps a little bit to be more comfortable in the offense, be more comfortable with the play caller. I think there's a natural evolution there, but I certainly agree with Jody that it's a little bit overblown. What isn't going to be overblown in day one, Rob Ellis, I'm already patting myself on the back because I made this prediction that Jalen Reagor is going to look great in training camp. And he looked great on day 1 of training camp for this reason. He's a first round talent. There's not 70,000 people there getting all over him. And he's playing against second and third team corners. And he dominated them. Are the Eagles going to create a problem for themselves that they keep going about it this way? Because he's going to play well against lesser cornerbacks. And then we're going to go down this route of fool's gold and saying, well, maybe it's a Nelson Aguilar. Light comes on a little bit in the third season type thing. Should we leave the door open? Should we be Motel 6? Should we leave the light on and say, maybe for Jalen Reagor?
I think it's a good thing, John. I think if anything, he's not being enabled anymore that, hey, you were taken in the first round and we're going to force feed reps to you. Now it's kind of like, if there's any kind of competitive spirit with the guy, you're with the twos now, man. 2 years ago, you were the first round pick. You were the belle of the ball. And now, you're fighting for a roster spot. So if he's got that juice, that fire, and I read your stuff on JAKIBsports.com and what everybody else is saying, he looked good yesterday. I think it's a good thing because you need depth. And this team, one of the strengths I think of this team in general is depth, offensive line, defensive line. And now if you can have him as a 5th receiver potentially with the ability that he has, I don't think there's anything bad about it. I think it's a good thing. Now, will the fans maybe start hyping him up a little bit? I don't know. The fans are so angry at him to begin with. I think it's going to take a lot to get them to come back around on him. But I think it's a good thing. And I hope he's grown up enough to realize, look, man, this is kind of do or die for you, at least with this team and maybe in your NFL career. So I think it's a good thing.
John, I know they worked red zone yesterday, big time. Any special teams? Because that's going to factor in on the whole regular decision.
A little bit at the end. He was the first team punt returner. So, I mean, all the guys rotating. He was first. Greg Ward was second. Britton Kobe was third. Then they had a couple other guys, Lance Lenore, who they just signed. But, yeah, he's number 1. He's number 1 punt returner. So, if they don't trade him, he's going to be here.
He's going to be the punt guy. I think that's a big part of it. He can look great against, as you correctly point out, second and third team defensive backs, but he may actually have to make a play against another team in a big spot on a punt and help the Eagles either win or lose a game. So that, to me, is as important as he looks in any of these plays.
And for Rob, by the way, this is for you, Rob. Greg Ward and Jalen Reagor ran a successful rub route.
Oh, my God.
No flags.
No flags? I know there were officials there, too, yesterday. Wow. Yeah. See that year, too, John. Things have changed, man. We're not going there. But I'll tell you, an underrated storyline, guys, if you take Jake Elliott out of it, who had a phenomenal year, I'm worried about special teams. I don't like Sippos. I don't like the return game. I mean, I hope Britton Covey at 5'8", $160, whatever he is, or Devin Allen, you could somehow emerge. It would be a great thing. But if Reagor is my primary punt returner, I just have visions of the Tampa Bay game, man, where he doesn't secure the ball. At least I know with Greg Ward, he may not do much, but he's catching it likely. So that's an area I don't think we talk about enough. It's a little concerning.
Oh, yeah. It was bad last year. Special teams was bad last year. And you mentioned the return game. The coverage was bad.
Yep.
So they need gunners. They need more consistent, not D-gun, but gunners on punt coverage.
Yeah.
They need better kickoff coverage. They need better return games. They need a better punt game. Everything basically except Jake Elliott. And I think Michael Clay is sort of, everybody's looking at him like this has got to be better.
Yeah, young dude too. He's not even 30 yet, John.
Oh, right? I think he might be one of their best special teams players. Unfortunately, he's coaching.
He's coaching.
We haven't seen a player coaching probably since the 50s in the NFL. Maybe we could make that happen again.
All right, Robbie, need your take on this because I know John's, and John slants a specific way because of his affection or his just belief that the player is that talented. That'd be the Eagles' first-round draft pick in the middle of their defensive line.
Yeah,
Jonathan Gannon this year. We're going to see changes to his defense. It's not going to be the same defense we saw last year. Some Eagle fans would like to see drastic changes, even so drastic that Jonathan Gannon is this guy making those calls. But he is. He's here. He may have gotten a couple interviews. He didn't get a head coaching job, despite the fact that the general manager said they're just renting him. Well, they've already paid up this year's rent, so he's here. Get used to it. How are we going to see those differences in Gannon's defense? Is it all going to be determined by Jordan Davis? And all right, we put him in the middle and then we figure out everything else around him. Or does he just fit that role and Gannon's got everything else? Is Zahn Reddick actually the key piece to the defense being different? How are we going to see differences in Gannon's defense?
Joe, I think it's a collective thing. I mean, yeah, Jordan Davis certainly is going to play a big part in this, or he's going to play a part in this thing for sure. But getting a double-digit sack guy in Reddick is enormous. Getting Brandon Graham back, not having to count necessarily as much on Josh Sweat and Derek Barnett, I think is big. You actually have real linebackers, a complete linebacker core for the first time in a long time. Look, Howie is added all over the place on this defense. It wasn't one or two moves. I compare it in this sense. I think you had the kind of depth along the defensive line you had in 2017, which means you could continue to throw fastballs at them and keep these guys fresh along the defensive line. And I think it's huge. Jody, I'm a big believer by the end of the season, the script's going to be flipped on Jonathan Gannon. People are going to be praising him, happy with him. I think he's going to be a candidate for a head coach, which is a good problem to have ultimately. But I think he was, in a lot of ways, hamstrung in a big way last year with a lack of talent. And we sort of want to use that excuse sometimes for Jalen Hurts, or we want to use it for Siriani maybe. But Gannon doesn't get the same benefit of the doubt because we're so inclined in this city to think like Buddy Ryan, Bud Carson, and Jim Johnson. Yeah. And it's got to be uber aggressive. And if we don't, if it's not that way, people think about the way people view Jim Schwartz. They're not big fans of his, right?
No.
But so I think we're going to be really happy, but I think it's a collective, not just Jordan Davis.
Well, who do you think you mentioned, Rob, Jordan Davis, and I'll even throw Brandon Graham in there, but Hassan Reddick, because Brandon wasn't here last year. So of all these James Bradbury, of all these new names, even if you want to go Kaiser White, Nakobe Dean, throw in Jaquaski Tart, all these new names, who's the biggest part of it? Who's the biggest key that needs to have a big season if the Eagles defense is going to take that step forward?
John, I'd say Reddick for a couple of reasons. One, it's a little bit of a challenge to make sure you utilize him right. If you look at the beginning of his career in Arizona, he didn't do much, and it looked like he was going to be a bust. And then they kind of figured it out at the end, and it carried over into last year with Matt Rule and his crew in Carolina. But you got to use him right. If you do use him right, he's a disruptive force, and that changes everything. I mean, that helps the back end. That helps your defensive line. That helps your offense because it can create a turnover and give you a short field. It felt like they didn't have a whole lot of that last year. So I would say
part of special teams as well.
Yeah,
you can't flip the field. You can't get field position.
Yeah, great. It felt like everything was 75-yard drives and real deliberate kind of stuff. Not necessarily the way they wanted to go. Plus, they ran the ball a lot, which meant there wasn't as many big plays. But I think it's Reddick more than anybody else. If I had to look at somebody else on that defense, I'm curious as to what Bradbury is. Is he the guy we saw in Carolina, or was he just a byproduct of a mess in New York last year? I'm not really sure. I think I also have some PTSD from some of the other corners who have come over here in years past and didn't live up to the hype.
That's fair.
So I have a little bit of that bias going in. So I would say those two guys I would put on the forefront. But let's face it, guys, this goes for offense and defense. I can't wait to see what Nakobe Dean is at the NFL level, because he was so good at the college level. So he's the guy I'm probably most excited to see.
I just got a text from Kerry Williams who said, Is Rob Ellis referring to me that he's got PTSD from? I'm not going to return that.
The answer is yes, Carrie, but don't give him my address, Jody. Don't tell him where I live.
I won't be giving you your number or your address.
Thank you.
Unless you need some sconce advice.
Sconces. Yeah, I think I have to take the day off today later on Sports Take to look at some sconces, but don't tell the guys.
The Eagles can probably get out and get the sconces since they've only got to walk through.
Good point.
Flip side, the question you just asked with John, the new guys on the defense who are going to be there. How about the old guys? How about the guys who might not be grasping that attention because they were here, they were already part of it? Maybe they're benefiting just like Jalen Hurts. 2 consecutive years in a row dealing with the same coach. Why don't we talk about anybody else getting that same benefit that Jalen Hurts gets?
We mentioned it with Fletcher Cox. I just wrote about Fletcher. He was talking about it. Second year in the defense, and he's a better guy.
Since John's already mentioned Fletcher, who's the guy who's flying under the radar? The returning defensive guy who did his job in the system last year and's got a chance to do it even better this year because of the additions the Eagles have made.
Do we get a full season out of Javon Hargrave? He was a world beater early, right? And things really slowed down. But do we get 17 games out of him? And I think he could maybe be a guy who benefits from that rotation I was talking about. And he's also a guy who played in a lot of odd man fronts in Pittsburgh, right? So I think that this could aid him big time, Jody. And he's also in the same position Fletcher's in, where, let's face it, he's pretty much playing for a contract and for his NFL future. So I think Hargrave's kind of flying under, because we're looking at Jordan Davis, right? We're wondering, oh man, should they have brought Fletcher Cox back for $14 million? BG, all these other guys were kind of Hassan Reddick. We're looking at all these other guys. And he's a really good football player, man, that is kind of flying under the radar a little bit, but I think could be huge for this team.
It's interesting because we've gone down this route. So I do want to focus in a little bit. You mentioned Javon. I agree with you. But Fletch, from this perspective, and both you guys, because both you guys get to take calls and talk to the fans more than me. So I want your perspective. It seems to me everybody that they don't want Fletch. They want to see Milton Williams. They want to see Javon. They want to see Jordan Davis. And as Jody says, Rob, I think Jordan Davis is going to be a great player, but hasn't done anything yet. Milton Williams showed some nice signs. He's not Fletcher Cox, even remotely. Javon Hargrave, he made his first Pro Bowl. He had 7.5 sacks, but as you mentioned, it was heavily tilted towards the start of the season, kind of tapered off, very much Aaron Cepas like late. But Fletcher's one of the best defensive players in this franchise's history. Why the disconnect of people saying we got to turn the page on Fletcher Cox? It shocks me. And the Eagles don't believe it because they gave him $14 million. Now, they wanted to reboot the contract and they got that done, but $14 million is $14 million. They think he can play. Why does the fan base think Fletcher Cox can't play?
Is some of it, John, the position he plays? I don't think defensive tackles get enough love in general because sometimes it's not a numbers position. Maybe some of that has to do with it. I think there's a lot of pushback that he came back for $14 million. Had it been a little bit cheaper, I don't know. I mean, maybe some of it is that he pushed back a little bit last year on some of the things he was being asked to do. And maybe the fans didn't like that. It's weird because the fans aren't big fans of Jonathan Gannon either, but they seem to be siding with Gannon when it comes to Fletcher Cox. I don't know. It's a good question. I think I think people view him as a guy on the downside, but his downside is probably better than most. guys who are on the up, I guess. Yeah, I think he gets a bit of a bad rap. He's probably not appreciated to the level he should have been, because you're talking about he's around his 10th year, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
A pretty good body of consistency here, and a guy who played on a Super Bowl team. So he probably should get a little bit more love than he does. I don't quite get it. I think maybe the price tag has something to do with it. If he came back at like 10 or 9 as opposed to 14, I don't blame him for grabbing as much as he could grab, but I think maybe that has something to do with it.
Rob, I'm sure you guys have talked about this on Sports Take, and you have on your WIP shows, but we haven't gotten your take here on Birds 365. The fact that Nick Siriani will not be calling plays this year, unbeknownst at least to me, and I think almost everybody else, he wasn't calling them for the second half of last year either, and that became common knowledge. A little bit of a surprise there. But he's turned the responsibility over to his offensive coordinator. John and I both John maybe more so than me, like CEO coaches, guys who don't feel one side of the ball has to be a bigger responsibility for them than the other. But he is just a second-year coach. You don't see guys do it as quickly as Siriani has done it. Will the Eagles benefit from that this year? Will they be better if you believe that they were better in the second half? And the big reason was Siriani gave up the play calling responsibilities. I wish I knew exactly how much credit Shane Steichen should get for last year. Going into this year, are the Eagles better because of it?
I actually like the fact that he was secure enough, especially in his first year, to turn it over. My guess is he just wanted to be able to. He was so hyper focused on calling plays that he couldn't, worry about the defense or the special teams or all the stuff that you have to worry about as a head coach. So I can live with that, Jody. I'm good with the decision to turn it over. You obviously have some trust in Steichen. The one thing I'll say about Steichen is, and this is not a knock, I'm almost in the I don't know category with him as far as this year goes. Let me wait and see. But he did almost what he had to do last year. It was pretty obvious that if you wanted to throw the ball 30, 40 times, it wasn't going to work. So they kind of did the obvious. However, sometimes it takes teams a long time to get there, and the Eagles did it, and they did it well. But I'm good with Sirianni being willing to make that kind of move. I think it shows a little something about him as a guy. Look, you have to be confident as a coach, but an ego can be a downfall of a coach too, and you get stubborn to a fault. And this shows me that he's not that guy. As far as Steichen goes, yeah, I didn't know either. When that came out, I'm like, man, was I just asleep at the wheel here? How did we not know that? Right? It's almost one of those things like you're like, do I admit this publicly? I didn't know, but I didn't know.
No,
but
a lot of people
knew.
Well, it was we knew late in the season.
Yeah,
we didn't know. It happened in the Chargers game, and he admitted late in the season that there was a shift. But we never knew when it came to be or when it started. And even now, Nick will say, I think it was the Chargers game, but I'm not sure. But so he tries to play it down, and everything's going to be run the same way. But and that'll be the final one for me. Everybody follow Rob at our Ellis Sports. You see it right there. Sports Take with D Gun. Is Barrett going to be back? Where's Barrett?
Barrett's back. Yeah. So we found him. He was. Yeah. We didn't know where he was. We tracked him down, and he was back in the helm yesterday. So at least for the rest of the week, he's here. Barrett's a rascal, man. You never know what's going on. So actually, I think he's going to be at practice on Friday. So
Friday. Good.
He'll
so
be
I'll see Barrett. I'll see Barrett there.
Yeah, you will see. You will see. Barrett's not easy to.
Wait a minute. Barrett's not easy to see. How the hell do you say that? Barrett is huge. How do you? If you miss Barrett,
he's trimmed down, man.
You gotta eat some carrots, buddy. Your vision's going if you can't see Barrett. Jesus.
He's a lean, mean fighting machine, Jody. How dare you? No, but he's. I meant to say. Miss, okay. He is Barrett's the guy.
He's a big guy, great guy as well.
He's
so
the best.
I will be looking forward to seeing Barrett. But to get back to the Sirianni point, now we all lived through Doug Peterson, and I joked. I was in Minneapolis, and I joked, all right, he's got a lifetime dispensation card when they won, and that lasted 3 years, which is still astonishing to me. But the point is that things can change very quickly. And, Jeffrey Lurie tends to look for scapegoats if expectations are not met. And we saw that in Doug's era with Mike Rowe and Carson Walsh and people like that. Is there any way this giving up the play calling, which I applaud, by the way, personally, comes back to bite him in the you-know-what if things go in a negative direction and Jeffrey Lurie starts saying, well, we brought you in here to be the offensive guy, to be the innovative young coach, to be the play caller. Any negative aspect to it from that perspective?
I would assume he ran that up the flagpole, John. So I don't think he was doing it independently. So they signed off on it. I would guess would be the first thing I would say. Or you could even look at it the other way, right? Is Steichen scapegoated if it doesn't look well, and that protects Nick?
Yeah.
No, I don't think ultimately it falls that way. I'm with you. I was surprised how quickly it happened with Doug. You know, I think Wentz had a lot to do with it in a lot of ways. But no, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think Jeffrey Lurie also wants to be this guy where he's having constant turnover, right? I mean, Chip was a very short tenure. Yeah. Doug was, for a guy who won a Super Bowl, was crazy short. I don't think they want to, the Siriani thing to be over 2 or 3 years and they become known as this team that's just almost like an NHL team where you're just recycling coaches nonstop. So I don't think that hurts him. I really don't. I think if anything, it insulates him maybe even more as the head coach.
They already have a team like that in the division. They're called the New York Giants. Turn their coach over every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, that's true. Although I think Dable, they got that right with that hire. Eventually, it's not going to happen right away, but I think eventually they're going to be a lot better.
Probably better than the predecessors.
Could be much worse.
At least that much. Yes. Last thing for me, Rob. Howie Roseman spoke yesterday as well, and John told us that he specifically pointed out we need guys like Kayvon Wallace to step up this year. They got to. He put a couple of his own players on notice, deserved players, as a matter of fact. So good on Howie. Mm-hmm. We've given him a lot of credit for having a tremendous offseason in both the draft and in free agency. And mean it when I say it. I'll just speak for myself. I mean when I say it. I think Howie's had a hell of an offseason. Mm-hmm. But Howie likes to tinker. Howie likes to be involved. Howie likes to have his stamp on the team. If he's already stamped it well enough, what the hell is he going to do all this preseason? Should we worry about? But Howie's going to want to change something because he always does. Can Howie be a understated or at least underactive GM before the year starts?
No. You never discount Howie making a move. I think, Jody, if he can figure something out at safety or to help the special teams or return game, he'll do it. I would say this, if I had to bet money that he sits pat or he does at least something before the regular season starts, I'm betting on something all day because that's just his nature. And you know what? I'd rather it be that way, Jody. I'd rather my executive or my GM err on the side of aggression than some guy who's always standing pat. No, let's see. We'll see what happens. He's always kind of going for it, whether it works all the time or not. I'd much prefer it that way than some of the other GMs we've seen in this town.
Rob Ellis, you'll catch him today with Barrett Brooks. Now, you sure Barrett Brooks? If he pops up, I'm going to know who it is because Barrett is a big guy. You sure he's going to be with you?
Jody, if he's not there, I'm going to his house. Okay, we're going to make this happen today. I am stone cold locking this thing in that Barrett will be there today.
By the way, Rob, I just noticed over your shoulder. I never noticed before. Yeah. You got the bird Irving with Julius Strangling.
Oh, yeah, yep.
I love that. I love that.
It's one of my all-time favorites. I got Bednarik over Gifford, Doc and Bird strangling each other, and Reggie White looking over my shoulder. If I get out of line, he sacks me, guys. If I get a little crazy sometimes. So I try to give you a little Reggie, representing my Temple squad, but I got a little Phillies and, we try to mix it up in the my studio is like a refrigerator, guys. Like I literally have a blanket around my waist. It is like there's like icicles coming out of my nose. It's so cold down here. So.
See, John and I are lucky. We're always at the beach with the
see that even in December, you guys are at the beach and it's beautiful in Atlantic City. I love it.
Working well for us. You work well for us today, Mr. Ellis. Thank you very much. Everybody should be tuned in later today for Sports Take when Barrett Brooks sits on Rob Ellis. Should be entertaining. Rob, thanks, bud.
Thank you, fellas. Great being with you.
Thanks, Rob.
Rob Ellis here with us on Birds 365. All right, coming back, I want to get Johnny's take on the same question I asked Rob about Howie. Howie's gotten the job done here. This is a good roster. It's a better roster. It's an improved roster. McMullen's loving it. I'm loving it. Most of our Bird streaming fans are loving it here on Birds 365. Can Howie resist the temptation of doing something that may help the team or may actually set the team back? he is a busy general manager. Can they get through it? I don't know. Other than special teams, as Rob brought up, and that's so small. Are you afraid that Howie Roseman might look to do something for the sake of doing something? I'll put that to Johnny Mac. When we come back, stay right here on Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
7 on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
John McMullen, Jody McDonald, your Mac Birds 365 guys here. Appreciate you streaming in with us on Birds 365. Appreciate Rob Ellis and his Kerry Williams love joining us for a spot today.
Always good to get a Kerry Williams reference, Jody. Always.
He opened the door and I walked through it. And we've got another good guest hopefully coming up. Connor Orr, Sports Illustrated national writer, is going to jump aboard with us hopefully in the next 20 plus minutes. So keep it right here. I asked a question to Rob and then I posed it again before we went to break. Johnny Mac, you know what I'm referring to. Howie Roseman spoke yesterday. Two-part question. Number one, as I stated with Rob and with you, any fear that Howie might just get a little itchy and do something that doesn't really need to be done because he's done such a good job this offseason? And number two, anything else that Howie said that intrigued you yesterday? He got up there on the podium with Coach Siriani before practice started. Anything that he said that made you go,
I think the biggest thing I brought up was the safety position. He rarely singles out particular players. And with Kayvon Wallace, just looking at the transcript and the break, the exact quote was Kayvon needs to take a bigger step. So that is always sort of, I raise my eyebrow when I hear that. And then for the position as a whole, he said, it's like every position we'll evaluate it and constantly be on the lookout to improve the roster. Team building is a constant thing here. I don't know if there's any position I would say, hey, we're good. That's the nature of Howie Roseman. By the way, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, you see the back end of the roster churn constantly. They signed 3 guys yesterday. Lance Lenoir, Jaden Graham, and Cameron Tom, I believe, the center. They're probably not going to make the team, but they're constantly churning. They're constantly looking for potential upgrades or potential players that might have a trait that they could develop. I think I never criticize him for that. I think it's a really good thing. As far as splashy moves, I think it's wait and see on Bates for everybody because the Bengals don't want to give him up, number one. It would cost tremendously. I think the Eagles want to look at, hey, maybe Kayvon Wallace figures it out. Maybe Marcus Epps figures it out. Maybe it's better than people think it is. And then there's Reagor and Dillard and those types of guys who might be moved because you kind of know. Well, certainly in Dillard's case, you kind of know he's out of here next year, good or bad. If you need him or not, he's out of here. So, at what point does that come to fruition where you say, all right, maybe we got to move him because we're going to lose him. And maybe LaRaven Clark is good enough. Or maybe you start thinking about compensatory picks. That's also what GMs do. Maybe Howie's like, we're going to lose more people than we're going to get next year. Maybe he gets a half decent deal. You get a comp pick. So a lot of things in play when it comes to that. But hey, he has a history of making trades in August that we know of. And some of them are pretty high profile.
Right. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah. Ronald Darby, probably the biggest. People forget that was a pretty big deal at the time because you're giving up Jordan Matthews, who people thought was a really good receiver, was more of a high volume guy. And I think it was a 3rd round pick, wasn't it, Jody? So that's pretty significant to get Ronald Darby. And Ronald got hurt. Then he came back. They won the Super Bowl. He's always looking to do something, always.
Let me ask you about a specific question because you mentioned the 3 guys that the Eagles signed yesterday, quote unquote, bottom of the roster guys. Yeah, that's how I would describe them too. Jaden Graham, tight end that played with the Falcons, a couple other teams, has I think 12 career receptions during his time in the last few years here in the NFL. Surprise guy showing up on the pup yesterday was Rich Rod. Didn't know that he was dealing with an injury.
Yeah, I didn't know either. I still don't know.
Okay. I didn't know if you did. If you had known, I'd ask you to tell me, but if you don't, then that's fine. Was that part of why Jaden Graham was signed, that they knew that this was a possibility? Because that is, if Howie's looking to do something, just me, and I'm not here to suggest to Howie, but if he's listening, so be it. If he's still looking to upgrade, Jaden Graham is somewhere between 80 and 100 as far as roster goes. And if you're over 100, you're not going to be making the team. You're not even going to be on the practice squad. So you get the point I'm trying to make. Backup tight end. And I'll get your just quick read on Calcaterra in practice yesterday. But if, God forbid, Dallas Goedert goes down, the Eagles are screwed. Because the drop-off between him and whoever's going to replace him is probably bigger than anywhere else on the team. I mean, number one spot that if you lose your guy, he's done for the season. Now we've got a much significantly less talented player in the position. That's probably the biggest drop-off on the team. So if you could get someone that if Goddard goes down and done for the year, all right, there's a drop-off. There's no question. We're not going to be able to go out and get reunite the Kelsey brothers. That's not happening here. Yeah. But maybe the drop-off isn't as bad. A couple of things there. How does Graham fill into the, all right, worst case scenario, we could put him into the lineup thing? How did Calcaterra look? And do you think there is any chance that that's a position that Howie addresses?
Yeah, I've been talking about it for a while. I agree with you. I think that's the biggest drop off depth wise on this entire team. Dallas Goedert to the tight end too, whoever that is, whomever it ends up being. So we knew Tyree Jackson was going to be on the PUP list. So you also put Richard Rodgers. So all of a sudden you need a body. So I could see Jaden Graham being everything from just that to being, and the guy I immediately thought of was Alex Ellis, if you remember him, who came in during the Doug Peterson era, had played a little bit in Jacksonville, and they brought him in during camp, and we said, all right, this is just a camp body. And he ended up making the team and playing a few games and, kind of bounced back and forth, practice squad, making the team, playing a little bit. I could see Jaden Graham being everything from that sort of scale, everything from a camp body because they need a body because two guys are hurt to a guy who's going to make this football team because he's been in Atlanta for 4 years. I mean, doesn't play a lot, but he seems to understand. Obviously, he's from Yale, so you kind of know he's very smart. So he's going to pick up that part of it. And they just need a player. And you bring up Grant Calcaterra, positive first signs, look really, really good as a receiver. And that's what he is.
And he wore the Kazoo helmet too, right?
Yeah. The tight ends wore the Kazoo helmets as well. So, and it's shouldn't joke about Grant's concussion history, but he did go to Pittsburgh. And Dr. Joseph Maroon is out there, who has been the longtime Steelers team physician and is one of the leading concussion specialists in the country. And I forget the name of the doctor. I'll try to look it up in our next break. But somebody works closely with Dr. Maroon, cleared Grant, and that's why he came back to play football. So it's not like he just woke up one day and said, I feel good. He went to some of the top concussion specialists in the country and got cleared. So that part of it, I think, is a little bit overblown because, I think he retired more because he was scared, more because he picked up the newspaper. Well, kids don't pick up the newspaper, picked up his iPhone and started reading some of the stories about how dangerous concussions were. And he just said, I don't want to deal with this. I'll go in a different direction. And then when he did start to get a little bit more educated and he went to experts in the field, they said, no, you're fine. There's nothing wrong. People have had far worse issues than you and continued to play safely. So that's one thing. But so that's if you were going to ask me today, what is today? July 28th, Jody. Who's going to be the backup tight end for the Eagles? I'd say Grant Calcaterra. From the options given to me. Now, I still think at the cut down to 53, the Eagles might look at that waiver wire and say, you know what, this guy could give us more than Calcaterra early in his career, Jack Stoll or whomever, and go that route. Or you're right, if some team has a surplus of tight ends, Howie might not even want to deal with the waiver wire and say, I'll give you a 7th round pick. I'll give you a 6th round pick. I'll give you Jalen Reagor. Maybe it's a player for player trade. So I could definitely see them doing something at tight end.
Here's my take on Calcaterra and how he fits into the Eagle tight end room. And I said this on the night he was drafted, despite the fact that I knew when he was in Oklahoma, he was a very talented wide receiver, but had to step away because of the concussions, came back, looked good, but not as good as he did at Oklahoma. Here was my only downside concern. He wasn't, and I don't think he will be. And you couldn't see it yesterday in the workout, despite having his well-protected helmet on. Nobody's hit anybody. So there was no contact ongoing. If you're going to go to 2 tight end sets, and Dallas Goedert is still going to be on the field, as good as Dallas Goedert is at blocking, if you want to send him out into the pattern, well, then you're going to expect the other guy who's out there in a 2 tight end set to block. And I don't know that that's going to be Grant Calcaterra's strong suit. I think he's going to be a pass-catching tight end. And usually when you go 2 tight ends, either you're running the ball and you expect both of them to block, or you're going to send only one of them out in the pattern. And anytime I'm sending a tight out in the pattern and Dallas Goedert is on the field, I want him to be that guy. So I'm going to look to the other guy to do the dirty work and the blocking, and that's not Calcaterra's strong suit. So that was my only reserve with the fact that when they picked him, I thought it was still good value in the round that they picked him, but does he serve the role that you would think would the second tight end would mostly fit on this Eagle team with Goddard being number 1?
Yeah, I've talked about that before as well, Jody. It concerns me because, Dallas Goedert is such a good blocker. And the Eagles graded him the best blocking tight end in the NFL last year, and they're not the only ones. There are very few people who can block at tight end like Dallas Goedert. So it's not like you can say Jack Stoll can do the blocking. I mean, Dallas is better. Dallas is a better blocker. But he's also a great receiver. And if you keep him in line, it means you're using him less as a flex receiver. Now, the positives, you could say, well, now you have A.J. Brown, so now you can keep him inside a little bit more. You don't need him as much as a receiver. I'd prefer to have him as a receiver as well. There is a redundancy with Calcaterra because Calcaterra is not going to be a blocker. So you're right. And that's one of those things where Dallas, probably doesn't know it, but it'd probably be better for him if he wasn't as good a blocker as he is. It's just
you better not let him hear you say that because he takes a lot of pride in his ability to.
Well, it's funny when they drafted, he never blocked at South Dakota State, never, because he was, one of their best receivers. The Eagles didn't know he could block, and then he shows up, and they're like, "Oh my God, this guy." He just has a knack for it, and he's willing. That's half the battle.
That is half the battle.
And he just really, really took to it. And yeah, but you're not going to find a better blocker than Dallas Goedert in the modern game. Obviously, there have been in the past. Dr. Michael Collins, by the way, Grant Calcaterra. So. But I just want to clarify because a lot of people have said this. He didn't have to retire.
Right.
He decided to retire.
Yeah.
Like if he would have went to Dr. Collins when he was making that decision, he would have said, no, you don't have to retire. So it was pretty much Grant saying, I'm a little bit scared. I don't want to deal with this later in life, and making a brash decision for himself as a young person. Once he went to see the expert, he said, no, there's no issues whatsoever. So I think that because I've seen that out there, that he had to retire. He didn't have to retire. He made the decision to retire.
Agreed. All right. We've gone 73 minutes here since the show started here on Birds 365. And we've yet to mention any running back on the Philadelphia Eagles. And
running. Who cares?
We've forgotten the Philadelphia Eagles were the number 1 running team in the National Football League last year. And we go through an hour and change, and we haven't mentioned the running game once. Johnny Mack, who looked good in the backfield yesterday. Again, no, you don't have your notes to refer to. You don't check it off play after play after play when a running back makes a play, but your
running back. Nobody cares about the running game in the
Tony
NFL.
McDonald does. Come on.
It was funny because I was standing next to our buddy Tim McManus, and right when Jalen threw the interception to Marcus Epps, and the next play, was they were doing red zone work. The next play, they ran a draw to Kenny Gainwell, and that went for a touchdown. I put that in quotes. And I joked to Tim, all right, they've already gone run first. They've already shipped it from pass first to run first. But yeah, their running backs are fine. I think that's part of the reason you don't hear a lot of talk about them. And when we do talk about it, all right, could they use a bigger back? Yeah, probably. But do they need a bigger back? I think Jalen Hurts himself alleviates some of that need as a short down. I think Boston Scott alleviates that kind of need because he's got sort of a knack for it. They seem to like Kenny Gainwell running when they're spread, when they have 4 receivers on the field or Goddard's flexed out or something like that. They like to run that draw with Kenny Gainwell. And I think, there's a lot of excitement surrounding him as potential improvement. And then there's Miles Sanders, who I'll tell you what. All right, I'll give you a bad and a good. Bad first pass of the summer, juggled it, but he caught it. He hauled it in, but he juggled it. He is in tremendous shape, though. I mean, he looks different. You can tell he knows he's got to prove something this year. But he's just a good player. Is he a great player? I talk about it all the time. If you're expecting Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Dalvin Cook, you're going to be disappointed. He's not that guy. But he's a good running back. So I think Eagles fans have had weird swings of expectations. After his rookie year, they thought they had a superstar running back. They didn't. Now that they've seen just 800 yards, 900 yards, 730 yards, they say, oh, he stinks. He doesn't stink. He's a good player. He was a good player when he was a rookie. He's a good player now. Would you like him to be a better pass catcher? Yes, but you don't need him to be because you have Kenny Gainwell. He's a great pass catcher. Could he be better in pass protection? Yes. But again, he's not going to be playing on third downs a lot. He's not going to be playing on hurry-ups a lot. That's going to be Gainwell. And then there's some ball security issues you need to tighten up. And, in the 4-minute offense, don't run out of bounds. That's a legitimate criticism. You got to understand situational football a little bit better. But you could do a lot worse than Miles Sanders.
So, Kennedy Brooks did nothing that grabbed your attention. You said, oh, shoot, there's a rookie that we can be scrutinizing for the next couple of weeks here before the season.
Well, the thing with running backs, and I joke, nobody cares. I mean, you can't judge a running back till the pads come on. I mean, what are you going to do in that type of atmosphere? So we talk about it in the spring, and we talk about people not liking the running game in the NFL or not caring about the running game in the NFL just till December until they need it. It's tough to gauge running backs when there's no pads and there's no physicality. It's a physical position.
And we'll see how physical they can get. All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald, your Mac and Mac Birds 365 guys. We're going to add a third voice to the mix. He does a great job covering the entire National Football League. Oh, we're going to get his Eagle take, that's for damn sure. But we'll touch on a couple of things outside of the city of brotherly love with our next guest, Connor Orr of Sports Illustrated. Joins us here on Birds 365.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
You got your Mac guys here on Birch 365. McMullen and Connor Orr, good enough to hop aboard with us, fellow Jerseyite NFL writer for Sports Illustrated. Connor, you going back to work? You ready for some football, bud?
Oh, it snuck up on us this year, you know? The football preview issue for Sports Illustrated closed last week. I worked all summer, so we don't get any time off.
We never get any downtime. You're right. You're right, Tom. People don't realize football, right? That my wife to this day, she's lived with me for I don't know how long. I can't say it loud in the home studio, but she still says, "Well, football's over. What are you going to do?" I'm like, You've been watching it for this long." She still says the same thing every year. It's amazing. It never ends. The calendar is amazing. But so let's start with Kyler Murray, just because I find this story so interesting. Obviously, the Cardinals went all in from a financial perspective. They had to. Tremendously talented player. But then you have the leak of the contract, which is, the contract language, which is rare. It happens occasionally, but rare. And this independent study clause, which was wild to me. I mean, why would that even enter your mind, Connor Orr, if there wasn't a problem? I mean, who's thinking about that? To put it in a contract if it's not a problem.
It's interesting from a lot of different perspectives, right? I mean, you don't want to do any source guessing here, but the league's own media arm was the place that broke the story, right? So you wonder if the Cardinals wanted this out there in some way, shape, or form to sort of shame Kyler Murray into doing his homework. And if you had to go through those lengths in order to make something like that happen, is he really a guy that you want to commit 5 years and $240 million to? And, I've seen it as this instance of this brilliant 3D chess move by the Cardinals, but I mean, this isn't an organization.
I see it the opposite way.
Yeah, right? This isn't an organization that's played a whole lot of brilliant 3D chess in my mind over the last 5 years. So I don't know why they would start now, sort of being this team that does all these brilliant things that we can't comprehend.
Yeah. By the way, real quick, just as a follow-up, sorry, Jody.
No, go ahead.
Did you get any sticker shock from that contract as well? I mean, we know how it works with and Deshaun Watson, so it's about timing and circumstance. But still, when I start thinking about these contracts and where they're going, we still have Lamar. We still have then it's going to be Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. I can't even imagine what that's going to start at. Any sticker shock at all when you see these quarterback contracts?
A little bit. It's interesting. Like with Aaron Rodgers getting to 50, you see the market kind of fall in, and so we're not at the old formula, right? Where it's like 50, 50.5, sit 51. And Jared Goff and Carson Wentz really changed that a couple of years ago, where they took below market slightly in order for them to get the security. But I think we're getting back to something closer to the old formula, right? Where it's going to be, I got to beat the next best guy by $500,000. And then it's just, unless it's Aaron Rodgers, unless it's Patrick Mahomes, then I got to beat the next guy. And so to me, that didn't surprise me, although the contract is, like we said, incentive laden. So with Kyler, yes, the average annual value, which is all agents care about, is up there, but I don't know at the end of his career how much money he's taking home compared to some of the other guys that are up there. And so with all these things, you have to just look at it through a magnifying glass.
Speaking of a sticker shock quarterback, that would be the guy who everybody's attention was grabbed when he signed this offseason, Deshaun Watson, because he got a completely guaranteed $230 million deal. He's practicing with the Cleveland Browns. I thought there'd be no way he'd be practicing with the Cleveland Browns. We know he's going to get some kind of punishment. Maybe I shouldn't say that, because some people have speculated he may get a complete pass. That would floor me, but just the fact that he is still practicing, and we have not heard from Judge Sue Robinson yet as to how much his punishment should be. Is there a backstory here, Connor? Is it just her doing her due diligence and not being dictated to by the NFL calendar? Are there influences here that we're not factoring in? I'm admitting I'm like, you can knock me over with a feather with the fact that this is dragged into past when the Browns are opening up camp. What do you make of the timing of this entire procedure?
I think the fact that it's taken this long is a good thing. I mean, the NFL wanted to outsource the judiciary process because it was clear that, after Greg Hardy and Ray Rice, Roger Goodell was not fit to handle something like this, right? And so if you're outsourcing it into a court-like process, you would want it to resemble the one that, we have installed in this country, and hopefully that, it takes time and it takes patience and due diligence, and that it doesn't really matter if he's practicing because, they can just yank him off the field one day and it doesn't really matter. My concern is, I go back to the beginning of this process, and the NFL pretty immediately early on leaked that they wanted a year plus indefinite, and they don't do things not strategically, right? And so why did they do that? I think they did that because they know they're not going to get it. And I think that they have no interest in appealing this system that they just set up and having Goodell overrule in the first major instance of that. And so I think they know they're not getting a year. I think they wanted to look tough. And I think at this point, they know that this thing's going to fall between, the reports are 2 and 8 games. I mean, that sounds right to me.
And I think you're right, Connor, as far as your take on that. Now, when it comes to a potential appeal, 8 games, I think they'd be fine with. And I think they just would lean on, all right, this is the system. That's what Sue decided. She's a former judge. We can live with it. We don't like it. But 2 games? Do you think that if they want that and see, here is what, and we've talking to a couple of lawyers as well, judges sort of lean on precedent. And the precedent here shouldn't be 8 games. You can go back to Ray Rice. Ray was 2 games. I forget what Greg Hardy was. Now, I think Ben and Ezekiel Elliott were 6 games. They tend to lean on that precedent. So if she goes in that lower end, 2 games, you think that could cause a problem, because then the league's going to get killed from the perspective of everybody's going to blame them. Oh, you get 2 games and you can have all these allegations of sexual misconduct. That's the NFL. That's a bad look on the NFL. Do you think that presses the issue a little bit more?
Here's what I think that the NFL isn't planning for. Roger Goodell, I think, assumes that everybody is as up to date on the NFL judiciary process as the three of us or any of the national writers or any of the beat writers who cover the league from a day in and day out process. My guess is if I went out in my yard, my neighborhood, and interviewed 6 of my neighbors and said, did you know that the NFL is an independent judiciary process? Or who do you think suspends the players in the NFL? 6 out of 6 people would say Roger Goodell, right? And so that's his problem, right? If Deshaun Watson gets 2 games, that's Roger Goodell's problem. That's on Roger Goodell's legacy. He set this system up. He's going to choose not to appeal, which I would be shocked if he appeals and drags this out. And, that's going to be another thing that he's going to have to wear around his neck, just like he's had to wear Ray Rice. I mean, that was an embarrassment for the league. And I think if Deshaun Watson gets 2 games, it's going to be an absolute embarrassment for the NFL.
Right. And I talked to someone we all know, Eric Edholm, during the weekend, and he made a good point where he goes, wait a minute. Can you actually give less games to Deshaun Watson than you do to Calvin Ridley for putting in a couple parlays? No, that just there may be people that don't understand the whole judiciary position, but they'll understand that. Wait a minute, guy put in a couple of bets, and he's going to miss more games than a guy who had to settle 20 some odd lawsuits because of sexual harassment. They've got to be very careful with how they handle it. All right, another quarterback situation, how they handle it will be very intriguing to me. Is Jimmy Garoppolo, Connor. Passed his physical, will be showing up at camp shortly. Won't necessarily be asked to throw right away, but that'll come within the next week or two. The 49ers seem to have completely committed to Trey Lance. Anytime the coach talks about it, it's always about they've come along and are better in the OTAs and the team is rallied behind. They've basically written Jimmy Garoppolo off before they've actually parted ways, either via trade and or a release. Is it going to be ugly when Jimmy G shows up?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think Jimmy wants to go too. I think that I think everybody's waiting. I think the weird thing is, why hasn't any other team kind of already lined themselves up? And why haven't we seen someone sort of stacking their deck already to put in a spot where Jimmy Garoppolo can just walk in and be their quarterback? I think we all thought, oh, maybe that's why the Texans are waiting and they're just sticking with Davis Mills. I said in our podcast a month ago, I still think the Dolphins are the right move. I think he knows Mike McDaniel well. I think he could go in there and challenge Tua, and there wouldn't be much of a drop off. I mean, I think he'd be a market improvement over Tua, and he knows the division really well. But I think now,
another Tua hater heard from
Jody loves Tua.
Put or on the com check mark, Connor, or another Tua hater.
He loves Tua. I don't see the
big
evidence
year this year. Big breakout year for Tua.
I hope you're right.
I think if you had to pay $30 million for Tyreek Hill to turn 3-yard gains into 5-yard gains, I think you're in a bit of a precarious roster position.
Did you mean 5-yard gains, or did you mean 15 or 25 yards? There's a number missing before that. You didn't put it there.
Now, Connor, Tyreek has said that's the most accurate quarterback in football, Tua. So we'll see how that works out for him. But let's shift gears a little bit to Kyle Shanahan, because he's involved in this Garoppolo situation. It's been evident to me since the divisional round of the playoffs, when they went to the Super Bowl, when he threw that interception to Eric Kendricks, that he literally turned it off and said, you know what? This quarterback can't win me football games. I have to win games a certain way. I have to build around a very good running game. They've been able to do that. They made that run to the Super Bowl. They made another run. They almost made the Super Bowl. I would argue if Nick Bosa didn't get hurt, they probably would have been up there again, to be honest. Very good football team that has been able to win with a game manager quarterback at a pretty significant level. If Trey Lance is even, I don't know, 15th best quarterback, but can make some plays, if he's Jalen Hurts, we'll use Philadelphia, how good can San Francisco be?
Yeah, I used that comparison actually in a column earlier this week. If he's Jalen Hurts last year, they can go to the Super Bowl, no doubt in my mind. And the reason why is because this offense is already hard enough for teams to stop, but none of the teams that run this offense and it's 40% of the NFL now. None of the teams that run this offense have a mobile quarterback. So think about that. Like Aaron Rodgers is probably the most, Ryan Tannehill, probably the most mobile quarterbacks that run that system. And it's all about math, right? It's, defensive ends have to choose who to block. You can manipulate the front. But if you have a running quarterback, it changes the math on teams that already don't have the numbers in the box to stop this offense, right? And so you're just obliterating any chance that these teams have to get a hold on your offense. And that's why I was so excited about Trey. That was the reason they picked him in the first place. And I just think maybe it's because he hasn't grasped sort of the baseline rules. There's a lot of rules in Kyle Shanahan's offense, right? If he hasn't grasped those baseline rules, whatever it is. But I think when he gets it and when the rubber meets the road, I think this thing's going to take off. And I think it's going to be really, really hard to stop, because there's a reason that half the teams in the NFL are running this offense, because no one can stop it. And then if you change the parameters of it again, you're one step ahead. You're going to be in a really good spot.
Connor, since you brought up Jalen Hurts, actually, John brought him up, and you said, yeah, I already went down that road with you, John. Give us your read on Jalen Hurts. Everyone is expecting an improvement from Jalen this year. Is it this much, or is it this much? And that could probably dictate how good the Eagles season is going to be. How much improvement do you see out of the Eagles quarterback?
I think it'll be a little bit. I think that, to all goad ourselves into thinking that there's some unseen ceiling here is probably irresponsible. I think he's good, and he's going to be a fine quarterback. And I think he's schemed up really well. I think with the offensive line that they still have and the pass catching weapons that they still have, you're going to be able to turn, let's say without all those tools, he would have been the 22nd best quarterback in the NFL. You're probably able to turn him high upside into like the 13th best quarterback in the NFL this year. That's pretty good. And you have a really good coaching staff. You have a really good, you have a lot of good personnel. And so, I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility that they win the NFC East. I don't think that's crazy by any stretch of the imagination. But, is he going to be rewriting any NFL record books anytime soon? No. I mean, is he even going to be Wentz at the height of Wentz? I don't think so. I don't think the tools and the gifts, like the natural God-given stuff, is there, but that doesn't mean he can't be more effective in terms of leading them to more wins over the course of his career.
Connor, what you mentioned when we were talking about the San Francisco offense, about 40% of the league is running a similar scheme. The Eagles defense looks like it's going to go into more of a Vic Fangio style defense, or Brandon Staley version of Rick Fangio's defense. How many teams are running sort of that Fangio inspired system? Have you looked into that? And if Vic is this well respected, why the heck is Vic out of a job as a head coach? And I think everybody would line up to have him as a defensive coordinator, but and he'll probably be able to pick a spot next year. Is it just that this league prefers offensive minds when it comes to head coaches?
Yeah, I thought, and listen, I mean, I had Nathaniel Hackett as my number one coaching candidate in September of last year. So, I thought it was a great hire, but I thought it was crazy not to give him a quarterback and see what he could have done in Denver. I mean, he had those teams competitive with Drew Lock and Trevor Siemian and Brock Osweiler. It was just, Chetty Bridgewater. And so I think there were some real lean times there. And I think he actually coached that team up pretty well. But to answer your first question, I would say about 90% of the NFL is running that defense now. I mean, but it went from Seattle cover 3.
Yeah.
And then, you saw that kind of phase out, and now it's this kind of stalified version of the Vic Fangio defense. And defensive, it's smart. I mean, if you have Patrick Mahomes, if you have Joe Burrow, if you have all these big guys that can extend plays and these fast wide receivers, why not just put a lid on that offense and force them to be more accurate in the, whatever it is, the 5 to 15 yard range? And that's why we saw the Bengals make the Super Bowl, because Joe Burrow could still do it. Some of these other guys can't. And so I think it's effective because it's always been effective. And, you know, it's just funny. We give all these coaches, like, we always say, oh, they're brilliant, they're geniuses. But Vic's been running this defense for a really long time.
Yeah.
Bothering people with this for a really, really long time. Why did it take until, 3 years ago for everyone to say, holy smokes, this is a great idea. We should all be running this. You know?
Now, but to follow up on that, Connor, at some point, are there diminishing returns if everybody's doing the same thing? Because then it becomes, all right, who does it best? Rather than I sort of have a trick that nobody else has. You have to be careful with that sort of line.
Yeah, and that's why the Ravens and the Patriots make the playoffs every year, because they don't care, right? And they do what everybody else doesn't do. And there are some teams that make a living off of that too. And I think that's, to me, that's a mark of a truly good organization and a franchise. Like the Patriots went 3-4 defense when everyone was doing 4-3 because they could get good athletes that nobody else could use in their defense. And then they built a Super Bowl dynasty out of it. And the Ravens were getting big guys and mobile quarterbacks when nobody wanted them. And they're putting together a perennial playoff team that's really talented. And so I think that there's certainly something to be said for that strategy. But if you're a defensive coordinator and you got to hang on to your job and you're just sitting there in your cubicle and you have no say over personnel, like sometimes that Fangio defense is just a really nice patchwork that you can put over things and make a lot of problems go away.
All right, Connor, I need your take on this, because if there's one story that I've read in the last 24 hours that had me shaking my head, it was this one. At Patriots camp, Matt Patricia is calling plays on offense for the Patriots. The former defense coordinator of the Patriots, the former head coach of the Lions, who was summarily dismissed pretty damn quickly, is calling offensive plays for the Patriots. The Patriots don't have a named offensive coordinator. It's now looking like it's Matt Patricia. Is Belichick going soft or crazy?
My coworker Albert Breer had some insight into this that I thought was interesting, and then I'll kind of mix him a little bit of what I think. But his take was that, basically you want guys who are not as obsessed or as deep into this offense as Josh McDaniels was, because when Josh and Tom were together for 20 years, the offense got really inaccessibly complicated, right? Because they could keep building on it and building on it and building on it. And then when Mac Jones came in last year, you basically had this biblical tome of an offense. And I think what they needed to do is they needed to tear it down, because Mac is trying to catch up on stuff that took Tom Brady 20 years to learn, right? And that's tough, right? And so what you need to do is you need to break that down to its essence. And I think that by pairing that with guys who, listen, every coach, I think, has an ability to, except for Rex Ryan, who couldn't draw plays the opposite way. And he told me that once. Every coach has the ability to do offense and defense, right? I mean, you're that steeped in the game, you're going to be able to do this in some way, shape, or form. And I think that these guys know the offense intimately anyway, but they can probably come at it from a fresh perspective and just introduce the basics, the tent poles to Mac, and let him learn the offense with time and take it with him. And my other take on this is that with Joe Judge too in the mix, you're introducing two play callers that have absolutely no tendencies in the NFL, which I think is interesting, because every offensive coordinator, someone told me this after the Super Bowl, that 4th and 1 play that the Bengals ran where Aaron Donald sacked Joe Burrow and the Super Bowl was over. They had run essentially the same play in the same situation a bunch of times last year. So the Rams just knew what was going to happen. And so with Joe Judge and Matt Patricia, if you don't know who's calling the plays, you don't know what they're going to call, what they like to call, what they've called in the past. And so, sure, does that mystique run out after a year or so? Yeah, but it also buys your quarterback a nice little runway of unpredictability.
Do you think people in the NFL, Connor, are too obsessed with titles, too accept, Bill doesn't, we said it the other day, we don't care about titles, and they go about things a different way. Now he has the gravitas to get away with that kind of stuff, whereas, a young coach would, if they tried that, they'd be just killed from day one. So part of it is that, but even from a labeling system, like here in Philadelphia, people are obsessed with, are they going to run a 4-3 or 3-4? And the real answer is neither. But so many can't accept that. Whether the difference between edge rusher out in Minnesota, they're changing to the more Vic Fangio style defense, and Daniil Hunter is going to be, an outside linebacker. Really, he's an edge rusher. I mean, why? If you want to label him, you label him correctly. Do you think the NFL and people around the NFL, whether it's fans or media, whomever, are too obsessed with titles? It's a pet peeve of mine.
Yes. In a broader sense, I think if you're an NFL coach in particular, I think titles, with Bill Belichick's team, it doesn't matter, because if you're on that staff, you're getting a head coaching job at some point, or you're pretty sure that you're getting a head coaching job at some point, right? But if you are the running backs coach and not the run game coordinator, that you have probably like a 90% less chance of getting interviewed for jobs. And so for those guys in particular, I think titles are essential. And, there are certain mechanisms within the rules, right? You can get blocked for certain jobs, not blocked for certain jobs.
Yeah.
If you have titles, that stuff matters. Everything else doesn't matter. I stopped asking. I mean, when I was a beat writer in 2010, I would always ask coaches, well, what kind of defense do you run? You're a nickel. I mean, that's what you run. You're running nickel. Yeah. Maybe a couple teams run, a little bit heavier of a dime presence, but that's the real difference here. It's between nickel and dime. It's a 3-4 and a 4-3. Doesn't really matter. I looked at the base defense stats the other day, and I think like maybe one team was in their base defense like more than 40% of the time last year, and that was a big number that surprised me. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff doesn't matter. Now, the other time that titles matter, I mean, we saw this with the tight ends fighting for stuff, right? If you're trying to get
contract,
if you're trying to not get pigeonholed into a certain, franchise tag category, I remember Jimmy Graham doing this years ago, saying I'm a wide receiver and I deserve to get paid by it. That stuff matters. But the way that we look at things, I think from a traditional fan / media perspective, I mean, a lot of this stuff doesn't matter, even to the point where, you're looking at a guy and you're saying, no, he's the offensive coordinator. But, if you look at how offenses work now, like, yes, one guy has the responsibility of calling the plays, but all the plays that go into that are, the quarterback's coach comes up with some, the wide receiver coach comes up with some. None of these guys are actually coaching the wide receivers or the quarterbacks. They're all, miniature offensive coordinators, you know what I mean? And so I think that, a lot of this stuff we get a little too worked up about for no reason.
All right. I appreciate John's question, because it reminded me of a question I wanted to ask you. Speaking of nitpicking and things that bother us, the last couple of years, more often than not, but there have been a couple of years where it hasn't popped up, point of effort from the referees, that the NFL competition committee decides we're going to make a concerted effort to clean this up, and they throw flags all over the place in preseason games, and it gets annoying to watch those preseason. Not again. And they do so. Sometimes it carries over into the season. Sometimes it's just they're making a point in the preseason, so it gets in the players' heads. We don't want you doing this going forward. What am I looking for this year? What is going to be, or is there even going to be, a point of emphasis in the way they call games that we're going to have to work our way through in preseason?
I remember when I was a beat writer, we used to get a presentation on that. Like the officials would camps and say, hey, this was the year. Like, I remember the last one I got was maybe like the running backs lowering with the crown of the head. I remember
they had the Adrian Peterson video. With him.
It was I felt like I was in high school again.
You and Kyler Murray got to go back to school. Make sure they'll punish you if you don't put your time in.
Yeah, Sports Illustrated has a big no video game clause in my contract too. I think it's one of those things where minus if I'm sure we'll see that come out at some point this preseason. I'm sure people will start talking about that, but if not, we're gonna know by the first 5 minutes of the first Hall of Fame game what it is. I think for me it's fine. It's a fine. Like it's annoying, but it's okay. But I think what concerns me is like, you're one of these kids that's trying to make the roster and hang on as like as the 50th guy. And, if a coach is just looking at a spreadsheet at the end of that thing, and you had 3 penalties in the preseason, but it was just used to make a point for somebody, and then you get whacked off the roster. I don't think that's fair, but, other than that, it's like, okay, I understand why you're doing it. Most people, don't watch the preseason anyway, unless they got a real gambling problem. And so, it is what it is. Or they have to write about it, which is the other people watching the preseason.
At Connor, or follow Connor on Twitter, 1N, as you see it there on the screen. You can read them at si.com/NFL, the Monday morning quarterback. Connor, I'll leave you with sort of, I need one surprise team. We know the heavyweights, the Super Bowl favorites. One potential surprise team on both sides of the docket, AFC, NFC. One that might break out. One that might be the Cincinnati Bengals from last year.
Are the Eagles too good to be the surprise?
No, I don't. Yeah. I think you got the Bucs, you got the Packers, you got the Rams. I think everybody defaults to them. I think the Eagles, you're going to make a lot of people very happy here.
I think my 3 candidates in the NFC would be the Eagles. I think the Lions. Because Jared Goff.
Now that would be a big one. That would be a big one. The Lions.
Jared Goff was 11 touchdowns, 2 picks over the end of the year last year. I think he's coming around, and they have a really good receiver. I mean, that receiving core is going to be pretty formidable, I think. Or the Vikings, just because I want to see what Kirk Cousins looks like in an offense that is not completely run game oriented, right?
With a coach that doesn't hate him.
Yeah, and a coach that doesn't dislike him. The AFC is harder because it's so top heavy. You know what I mean? And we know all the teams that are going to be really good. I would say if the Dolphins got Jimmy G, I would put the Dolphins in that category just because I like.
You're killing Jody. You're killing Jody.
But I mean, I don't know if the Patriots qualify again as like a team that can
qualify now.
As a surprise team, but I think we're all forgetting that it's still one of the best coached teams in the history of the NFL. But yeah, like I said, the AFC is tougher because I don't even know if the Bengals are surviving that division this year, with Baltimore being healthy.
Yeah, nobody talks about Tennessee, and they were the number 1 seed last year, and nobody talks about them.
The Colts, I think, are another team that, I don't think we're giving Matt Ryan nearly enough credit. I mean, that was a bad situation that he left, and I think he's going to be re-energized there. I think they could be really good this year.
All right. I'm glad at least we can agree on that, because you're just beating the snot out of Tua Tagovailoa. We're going to have you back on again, Mr. War, when Tua's putting up massive numbers a month into the season. We'll probably have on before that, but after a month when the Dolphins are 3-1 and Tua's playing great. Oh, I'm going to get you back on again, because I'm a Tua fan, and he is one of those lightning rod players that people seem to fall into one category or the other. You and I going mano a mano. I'm good with that. Kind of great stuff. Appreciate you coming on board. Thank you very much for a solid 25 minutes with us today. We'll get you back on again, big guy.
All right, looking forward to it. Thank you, guys.
Connor from Sports Illustrated. Other than the fact that he hates Tua, he's good. He always brings insight. And
we're kind of like, I'm not a big Tua fan, but I'm not a big Jimmy G fan. So, if you're asking me, would I rather have Tua as a younger player with some upside rather than Jimmy? Yeah, I'm taking Tua. Jimmy G. Oof.
My take on Jimmy G is this. I like Jimmy G more than you like Jimmy G. And I like Tua more than either you or Connor or like Tua. I can't wait to when San Francisco has to release Jimmy G, because the whole league knows that they can't keep Jimmy G now. So what are they going to do when the general manager's calling around? We'll take a conditional 7th-round pick. No, thank you, because they know you're going to release him.
Well, here's the difference, though. If there's more than one team, if some team becomes desperate, like Teddy Bridgewater injury, we always use that, and then all of a sudden you have 2 teams jogging, and Miami wants him. I don't know if they want him, but Mike McDaniel's there. So I know where Connor gets it. I mean, he has a history with him. But if you have 2 teams, you might not want to worry about guy being released and being able to, you might want to just be able to acquire him. If a quarterback gives you even remotely good play, you're going to be willing to give up a day 3 pick. Who cares? So maybe they could work it that way. But I agree with you. I mean, you should never, and as much as I like Kyle Shanahan, I like him as an offensive schemer and play caller. You should never say, I don't want the quarterback. He's not going to be here. GM, head coach, you should never do that.
Thrown under the bus. That's what Shanahan has done to Jimmy G. Thrown him under the bus. And I would be willing to wager with you, Mr. McMullen, a coffee, a Diet Coke, $5, $10, $20, whatever you want to bet.
Ooh,
Jimmy G released. He will not be traded. The rest of the league
they're doing their best. They're doing their best to get him released.
Good on John Lynch. He's making a bunch of phone calls.
Yeah.
I'm predicting the answer on the other end of the phone. No, we won't give you anything. We'll wait for you to release him. Thank you very much. I don't think that, and I think he can play a little bit, but they painted themselves into such a corner. I think the rest of the league has decided, no, we're not going to give you anything. So we'll see how it goes. All right, we got to come back, put a bow on this show here on Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
Coming back here on the Birds 365 wrap. All right, as we speak, the Eagles might be tiptoeing through the tulips down at the.
Oh yeah, they're working. They're working, Jody. Walk through meetings, mental aspect. They don't have to deal with us. They can do all the secretive stuff. You know, keep the all-important CIA level strategy decisions to themselves. all that kind of stuff.
God bless them. And hopefully they all pass with flying colors the amount of work that they have to put in. So unlike Kyler Murray, they don't get their contract ripped up because they don't put
4
in
hours, baby. By the way, how much does Microsoft pay for to be the official laptop of the NFL with the Surface laptop? And everybody just says, give me the iPad. Give me the iPad with Kyler Murray.
Understood that there's a whole bunch of dollars at stake, but people just say what they want to say. So, like I always say, give me a Kleenex. Well, that's an actual brand.
Yes.
You should
yes,
say, give me a tissue, but sometimes people just get used to saying something and they continue to say it. We will be saying not much tomorrow. Yours truly is off. I haven't been a day off here from Birds 365 in a while. At least one that was scheduled for me to be off. I did oversleep that one time that 6 months ago that my buddy Tyler hit me up at the start of the show, every show here on the stream. Jody Mack, you awake yet? Yes, I'm awake, and yes, I'm here and ready to go. But I will not be here and ready to go tomorrow. So Tone DeShields will be hosting tomorrow's show. Rick Saratella will be his co-host, and you'll be on for the first half hour like you usually are on days you got to go to camp. Right, Johnny Mack?
Correct. So I'll be here early. Jody Mackless, not excited about that, but I do have Tone. I got Rick Saratella, so we got some good pinch hitters for you, buddy.
I appreciate those stepping in for me tomorrow. And then Johnny Mack and I will be back on what's your weekend look like with the Birds?
They are practicing Friday, Saturday, walk through Sunday. Monday, I'll be here early. So we'll have to shake out all that. They'll be on the practice field Monday. So
walk through Mondays. Any walkthrough is not going to be open to
now walk through Sunday. Practice Monday will be a real practice. But then they're going to have a walkthrough. So I'll let you know. I got to look at the schedule.
I'm trying to give our viewers a little bit of a peek into the future, but if
I'm going to pull it up right now. We got time. What the heck?
Yeah,
Sunday, players' day off actually. So they're practicing Friday, Saturday, Monday, Tuesday they are practicing. Wednesday walkthrough, close to the media. Thursday back on the field. Friday players' day off. So Wednesday and Friday next week, you'll get me for the whole show. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, I'll drop in for the first half hour.
All right. Hope you paid strict attention to that. Took notes. Used either your iPad or your Surface to note when John McMullen will be here. Whatever device you want to use, that's complete. We're not going to send off a note that say, "Hey, don't mention that." You can use whatever freaking device you want. And we will use what we use, our microphones, to try and give you 2 hours of Eagle content every single day. Partner, have a good one tomorrow for you Birds fans out there. I'm not going to be back for 3 days. I'm not going to be back till Monday. I'm off tomorrow. But be here tomorrow for Johnny Mack with Tone and with Rick Saratella here on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.